Have you ever felt completely lost, desperately seeking safety in a world full of dangers? Imagine being hunted by enemies, your life constantly at risk, with no secure shelter in sight. This was the reality for King David when he wrote Psalm 16, a beautiful song of trust amidst chaos. What's fascinating about this particular psalm is that while David faced imminent death, he discovered an unexpected truth. True refuge isn't found in physical safety but in a relationship with God. One of the most extraordinary aspects of Psalm 16 is that scholars believe it was written around 1010 BC, during one of the darkest periods of David's life, when he was fleeing from King Saul, who was determined to kill him. Yet in these verses, we don't find despair but hope. Here's an intriguing question. How can someone find joy when their entire world is collapsing? The answer lies in what David discovered and shared in Psalm 16, a secret that has comforted countless people across 3 millennia. Let's journey together through this ancient prayer, written approximately 3,000 years ago, yet still speaking powerfully to our modern anxieties. Psalm 16 is known as a Michtam of David, a term scholars believe indicates either a musical notation or a particularly important teaching meant to be engraved not just on tablets, but in the hearts of listeners. David begins this psalm with an urgent plea. Keep me safe, my God, for in you I take refuge. The Hebrew word for refuge, here, chasa, creates a vivid picture of a small bird finding shelter under its mother's wings during a violent storm. It's not just about physical protection, but about finding a place of complete security and peace. In the dangerous landscape of ancient Israel, filled with predatory animals and enemy armies, finding refuge was literally a matter of life and death. Cities were built with high walls and watchtowers specifically to provide refuge. Yet David declares that his true refuge isn't in fortresses of stone, but in the presence of God. In verses 2 to 4, David continues, I say to the Lord, you are my Lord. Apart from you I have no good thing. I say of the holy people who are in the land, they are the noble ones in whom is all my delight. Those who run after other gods will suffer more and more. I will not pour out libations of blood to such gods, or take up their names on my lips. This passage reveals the religious context of David's world. In 1000 BC, the ancient Near East was dominated by polytheistic cultures. The Canaanites worshipped Baal and Asherah, the Philistines had Dagon, and the Moabites followed Chemosh. These gods demanded blood sacrifices and often led to destructive practices. Archaeological discoveries at sites like Ashkelon and Hazor have uncovered disturbing evidence of ritual sacrifices from this period. David makes a radical declaration for his time, rejecting these gods and their practices entirely. He wouldn't even speak their names, which in ancient thought was a way of acknowledging their power. His allegiance was exclusively to Yahweh, the God of Israel. In verses 5 to 6, we find some of the most beautiful metaphors in the psalm. Lord, you alone are my portion and my cup. You make my lot secure. The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Surely I have a delightful inheritance. These verses use imagery from Israel's land distribution under Joshua around 1400 BC. When the Israelites entered the Promised Land, each tribe received an allotment by casting lots, a practice believed to reveal God's will. Boundary lines were marked with stones to indicate property ownership. For an Israelite, land was more than property, it represented heritage, security, and God's provision. David takes this familiar concept and transforms it spiritually. Rather than finding security in physical land, David declares, that God himself is his portion, his inheritance, and sustenance. The cup reference recalls the ceremonial cup of blessing used in Hebrew worship, symbolizing abundance and favor. Verses 7 to 8 reveal David's intimate relationship with God. I will praise the Lord, who counsels me. Even at night my heart instructs me. I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken. The ancient Israelites viewed the heart as the center of thought and decision-making, not just emotions. When David says, "At night my heart instructs me," he's describing what we might call intuition or conscience, that inner guidance that he attributes to God's presence. The reference to God being at his right hand has deep cultural significance. In ancient Middle Eastern courts, the position at the king's right hand was reserved for the most trusted advisor and protector. By placing God in this position, David acknowledges complete dependence on divine guidance. The psalm then pivots to expressions of profound joy in verses 9 to 10. Therefore my heart is glad and my tongue rejoices. My body also will rest secure, because you will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, nor will you let your faithful one see decay. These verses contain an extraordinary prophetic element. While David was certainly expressing confidence that God would preserve him from premature death at Saul's hands, the Apostle Peter would later cite these verses in Acts 2 verses 25 to 28 as a messianic prophecy fulfilled in Jesus Christ's resurrection. The New Testament interprets this as David foreseeing that his descendant, the Messiah, would not remain in the grave but would conquer death itself. The Hebrew concept of Sheol, translated here as the realm of the dead, was understood as the shadowy afterlife where all souls went after death. Unlike the later developed concepts of heaven and hell, Sheol was viewed as a place of diminished existence, disconnected from God's presence. David's confidence that God would not abandon him there represents an early glimmer of hope for something beyond death. The psalm concludes with verse 11. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. This beautiful conclusion uses the metaphor of a path significant in a land where established paths were crucial for safe travel through wilderness areas. Wrong paths could lead to thieves, dangerous animals, or deadly terrain. The path of life represents not just physical safety but ethical guidance leading to abundant living. The phrase, joy in your presence, refers to the ancient Hebrew understanding that experiencing God's presence was the highest form of fulfillment. In temple worship, Israelites believed they entered God's presence in a special way. David extends this concept beyond ritual, suggesting a continual awareness of divine companionship. So what does this ancient prayer mean for us today? In our modern world, we seek refuge in many things: financial security, relationships, achievements, or distractions. Yet these temporary shelters often collapse when life's storms hit hardest. Psalm 16 invites us to find our refuge in something, or rather someone unchanging. It challenges us to consider where we place our ultimate trust. The psalm also offers a revolutionary perspective on satisfaction. Notice that David doesn't request prosperity or victory over enemies. Instead, he finds contentment in God's presence alone. This counters our culture's constant pursuit of more possessions, more experiences, more validation. Throughout history, Psalm 16 has provided comfort during humanity's darkest moments. During the Black Death pandemic of 1346 to 1353, when approximately 75 to 200 million people died across Eurasia and North Africa, believers clung to these words. In World War II concentration camps, many Jewish prisoners recited these verses. More recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic that began in 2019, countless people found solace in this psalm's promises of God's unfailing presence. Archaeologists have discovered fragments of this psalm among the Dead Sea Scrolls dated to around 100 BC, confirming its importance in ancient worship. Linguistic analysis of the Hebrew text reveals poetic techniques, including acrostic patterns and strategic repetition, that would have made it memorable for oral recitation in ancient communities. What's particularly meaningful about this psalm is how it progresses from desperate plea to confident joy. David begins by crying out for protection, but ends by celebrating God's eternal pleasures. This journey reflects the transformation that can happen when we shift our focus from our circumstances to God's presence. Consider the final verse again. You make known to me the path of life. You will fill me with joy in your presence, with eternal pleasures at your right hand. This isn't just poetic language, it's a profound statement about human purpose. According to David, the ultimate destination isn't merely survival or even success, but joy in God's presence. This challenges our modern definitions of the good life, suggesting that our deepest satisfaction comes not from what we possess or accomplish, but from who we're with. What's remarkable is how this psalm has transcended cultural and historical boundaries. Written by a Jewish king 3 millennia ago, these words have been prayed by Christians in medieval European monasteries, sung in African American churches during the civil rights movement, whispered by Asian believers facing persecution, and recited in contemporary worship services around the world. Psalm 16 invites us to recognize that while our external circumstances may vary dramatically, our fundamental human need for refuge and meaning remains constant. It offers a timeless solution, finding our security and joy in relationship with God. Take a moment to reflect on your own life. Where do you seek refuge when challenges arise? What do you turn to for comfort and security? Psalm 16 gently suggests evaluating whether these sources of refuge are truly reliable. The ancient wisdom of this psalm also challenges our perspective on possessions. When David says, "The boundary lines have fallen for me in pleasant places," he's expressing gratitude for what he is rather than craving what he lacks. In our consumer-driven culture that constantly fuels discontentment, this attitude of sufficiency is revolutionary. Notice too that David's faith isn't isolated. He mentions the holy people who are in the land, acknowledging the importance of community in spiritual life. Biblical faith was never meant to be purely individual, but lived out in relationship with others. This reminds us that finding refuge in God often happens through human connections and shared worship. Some scholars believe this psalm was used liturgically in ancient temple worship, particularly during festivals like Passover that celebrated God's protection. Imagine generations of Israelites singing these words together, reinforcing their collective identity as people under God's care. Psalm 16 also addresses the universal human question of mortality. By expressing confidence that God will not abandon me to the realm of the dead, David touches on our deepest fear, being forgotten, ceasing to exist. His hope points toward relationship with God extending beyond physical death. This perspective transformed how the early Christian community faced persecution. Historical records from the first 3 centuries CE document how believers facing martyrdom would often recite psalms, including Psalm 16, finding courage in the promise that death was not the end of their story. As we conclude our exploration of this ancient prayer, consider its remarkable journey through history. Written around 1010 BC by a fugitive king hiding in caves and wilderness. These words have survived empire collapses, natural disasters, and countless cultural shifts to speak freshly to us today. The ultimate message of Psalm 16 is beautifully simple yet profound. True refuge, lasting joy, and eternal purpose are found in relationship with God. This truth transformed David from a fearful fugitive to a confident king. It has sustained countless believers through history's darkest moments. And it offers us the same invitation today to discover that our ultimate security lies not in changing circumstances, but in unchanging presence. When David wrote, "You make known to me the path of life," he wasn't just speaking poetically. He was testifying to his experience of divine guidance through life's most challenging terrain. This guidance remains available to each of us not as a magical solution to all problems, but as a companion presence that transforms how we navigate them. In a world of temporary shelters and false refuges, Psalm 16 invites us to discover the unshakable refuge of God's presence, where boundary lines fall in pleasant places, where our hearts find counsel even in darkness, and where joy becomes our permanent inheritance. As we face our own uncertainties, may we hear David's ancient testimony echoing through the centuries and find courage to make it our own. "I keep my eyes always on the Lord. With him at my right hand, I will not be shaken." Before you go, I want to personally invite you to be part of our growing community here at Prayer Universe. If this video touched your heart or brought you peace, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a prayer or message that can uplift your spirit. But most importantly, I'd love to hear from you. In the comments below, share just one word or phrase of motivation that this video inspired in you, whether it's hope, gratitude, peace, or something else. Your words matter deeply to us because they help guide the content we create for this channel. Together, let's build a space filled with faith, encouragement, and connection. Thank you for being here, and remember, every prayer counts. See you in the next one.